Welcome, everybody. It's episode 4 of the Monitor Keeping Podcast, brought to you by the NPR Network. And we just want to say thank you again to Eric over there, Owen, all the other guys that are part of the network. They've been giving us plugs and really helping out. I've been reaching out just for general questions in this whole process of getting this thing started. And they've really been a huge help. I mean, getting this together, answering simple questions just so we can bring you guys some content. So again, that's the NPR Network or Morelia Python Radio Network. And you can go over to their website. It's Morelia Python Radio Network.net. Go ahead and look around, look at the other podcasts they are able to provide to the reptile community. There's some really good stuff on there. And a lot of things that are reptile related actually do cross over. And so I encourage you guys, even though we love monitors, that's why you're here. That's why we're here talking about it. The more knowledge you can get into your head, listening to some of this stuff, you can actually benefit from it just for the animals you keep. So, Kai, how you doing?
Hey, not too bad. Not too bad at all. I guess I would like to also say thank you to everybody that's been listening and just kind of keeping up with us and everything like that. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
All right, cool. And yeah, just everybody that's been tagging along and giving us updates and advice or just congratulations and stuff like that. We really appreciate all those kind words and everything like that. And really getting into this next podcast, we're trying to take advantage of just the questions that are coming from everybody, and we want to kind of put that together and really have another set of questions that we answer for you guys. As like I was mentioning in the beginning podcast, we really want anybody that is new or just beginning, or they have questions and they're at their certain stages of keeping monitors or breeding them or wanting to breed them and or just learning about them. We want everybody to kind of be involved. That way it stays fresh and a lot of information is passed along well enough. So yeah, for this this podcast is where we'd like to take it again. Okay, so good set of questions and things like that.
So these questions are from Eric Summers, and I know he keeps a few different species, Ackies, Kimberleys. He might have a few other ones out there. And I've had a few conversations with Eric here and there, but he reached out, and we actually encourage all you guys out there, if you're listening, go ahead and reach out. We're trying to make information available to everybody and get some of these questions you might be wondering about, that we might be wondering about, questions that, we haven't thought of yet. Go ahead and hit us up. Again, real quick, just to echo Kai, people have been having great things to say, and we're very thankful. First off, that you're even listening to that, you're giving us some feedback and everything's been positive. So if you have any criticism too, you go ahead, hit me up. Let me know. We want to make it the best that we can, So, but these questions come from Eric Summers out there. And question number 1, do you guys prefer nest boxes or full vivarium nesting? Pros and cons for both. An example, increased control of a microsite versus increased thermal mass, humidity sink, or whatever. Kai, okay. You want to start us off and take a crack at it?
Yeah. So my look at all this, okay, it isn't your choice. And initially it will be, you're going to just think, all right, this is how I want to do it with the nest bin. And you're going to, do the recommended suggestions, maybe make it heated or stuff like that. But sometimes even if you're choosing a nest bin, your animal's not going to like it. And you have to give another option as well. So, you don't want to just think where you're just using one thing. Think about having 2 to 3 different things, different levels, different temperatures. I would say ratios and gradients of soil, things like that. Something that's more sandy like, or stuff that's got a lot of twigs and leaf litter in it. They'll kind of utilize both, and so choosing one over the other may not be the best option. But I've learned that in floor and in cage nesting options gives you bigger gradient. And if you can hook it up right, turn your soil often enough, I'd say you're able to achieve a pretty decent nesting area and all that stuff like that for them, or a couple spots even. Man, and
Well,
so
you actually just got into this too with well, I'll let you touch on that in a second. Let me let you finish, but I was going to touch on the
yeah,
new
so
devices you have.
right, and so that was my thing is, I guess you can learn from me. I was only allowing my mangrove monitors to only use a nest box, or I was only allowing my mangrove monitors and my Kimberleys to use a nest box. Um, and so I would really hone in on it, try to study how to use the nest box as much as possible, try to make it easier for me to find the eggs for one, just kind of a lot of other people are using it, so hey, why not? But I learned that once I also introduced the in-floor heating and or in-floor nesting within the entire cage as well, they would utilize that just a little bit easier. I would say going down, coming up, and or laying clutches in a nice spot just seemed easier for them. And then as far as space and I would say square footage of the actual amount of soil they can have within the cage rather than having just a little nest box to work around, it gives them much more comfortability in how they maneuver around. With the nest box, it's kind of tight. So, you kind of, they only have so much to work around. So
Yeah.
for me, it's having the option of both now, and or having even other options like a tube full of dirt. It's a big tube, but it's basically full of soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my take on having the nest box or having a different option.
I think for me, I use both. For most of the dwarf stuff, I actually use nest boxes, and I haven't had any issues that I can tell that are from using the nest box. Um, I've never had eggs laid outside of that nest box. If I started running into those problems, I wouldn't hesitate to change. That would, there's nothing hold me back. I'm not just hardcore for nest boxes till I die. I'll let the animals, like Kai said, tell me what's going on. So if they stop nesting in those nest boxes and I see females and it looks like I'm going past the date
Or if they're
and they're holding
scattering,
on,
yeah, or if they're
yeah,
like scattering eggs, yeah,
yeah,
they basically don't want to use a nest box, had that option, but still chose to scatter. So
right,
you're gonna have to kind of make a judgment call,
right.
and really what I kind of say all the time is supporting them a little bit better, right?
And in
Yes.
some of my different cages, I actually use two nest boxes, something I've been messing around with. They're
Yeah.
just a little bit different. And one sits in, it has more of a temperature range from the mid to upper 80s for most of it. And the other nest box has, I would say, about 83 to 77 in there, getting down towards the other end. Just something I'm trying out. I'll let you guys know how it works out where these females choose to nest, either on the podcast or making posts and whatnot. But like I said, I haven't had any issues for the dwarf monitors. But with the sand monitors, more of a mid-sized monitor, getting to where you're at, Kai, with more of the length of lizard you're dealing with, it was
Yeah.
much easier for me to do whole cage nesting than try to find a nest box and make it work.
Right.
Yeah, and I built those cages. Those are larger cages. I built them with that purpose and that thought in mind for not only nesting purposes, but also because it's a sand monitor. it
Right.
lives half of its life in the dirt. So what else better could I give it than dirt? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
big
And a
pile
lot,
of dirt.
a lot of it, or a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
I guess getting into that amount of dirt, and I guess you kind of brought it up a little earlier when we first started talking about this a little bit. I kind of came up with it's an accumulation of everybody's idea, and I've really just taken it and simplified it into a simple PVC sleeve or a little. It's about the size of a dinner plate, and you can make them bigger or they can be made bigger, but all it is it's just a protective heat source. It's just a heat pad slipped into the sleeve, and then that's mounted to the bottom wall of the cage where you're planning to utilize a nesting area. Um, and for I just really hooked it up. We've been really working with other guys to have it prototyped and just trying to have ways where it's safe. It's the stuff's protected or not really in the way of having lizards rip at it. You know what I mean? Or water getting onto it. So right now it's just in its kind of infancy stages on kind of putting it together, but um, the amount of soil that a person is trying to use um, for any type of monitor when it's laying, whether it's an Ackie or whether it's a huge croc monitor or in this case it's um, my mangrove monitors or Allen sand monitors that are kind of mid-sized monitors right now, right? And so what it is the nest bins that are 2x2 or 18x18 are no longer are good size because these lizards are 3 to 4 feet now, and so
Mm-hmm.
you'd have to accommodate much more space. And um, some people still try to use a really big bin or really large tote and have that heated, and sometimes that really works. Sometimes it doesn't though, and so you'd have to utilize and figure out a way how to heat a large amount of soil. And so this plate that I'm trying to introduce, or this sleeve that I'm trying to introduce to other keepers, and kind of just get the ball rolling on how to heat up soil um, without taking up a ton of cage space, without kind of making the cage look awkward with just having a big bin in there, and at the same time having a heated source that's protected. Sometimes applying a certain heat pad just onto the side of a bin without that protected is just unsafe. And some of the other like my current heat pads that I use for they're a dog mat that once a dog lays on it, it becomes a certain temperature, and so it's by weight. If you place at least like 5 to 10 pounds onto this heat pad, it stays a certain temperature, and so that heat pad only gets about 105 ish, and transferred through the bin, transferred through the soil, it's about 88, give or take.
Good point.
And
Good point.
so you know that heat pad, it's sitting on the floor though, so I have to keep that area dry, and so I can't spray there, and I can't like dump water there, or I basically can't misuse that area and keep it wet because there's a cord coming from there, and that's just
Mm-hmm.
the giant cord that connects to the actual heat pad itself that goes out of the cage obviously, but that's just exposed wire in the cage, and so I want to kind of protect that as well. And so I'm using this different source where you're able to heat up a large amounts of soil, and at the same time have it protected and kind of incognito in the cage. Right. And so those are my takes on having heated soil in your enclosure, and pros and cons with having a bin, things like that. It's the animal's gonna tell you really at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If eggs came out good, not scattered, um, they basically went down. It was an easy process, came up. Then I would say leave what you're doing because it's working. But if things aren't working and you've got a stressed out animal, it's just holding on to eggs for way too long, it ends up either having issues worser than like egg binding or things like that, and eggs rotting in that area or getting caught in the pelvis area, stuff like that, right? Stuff like that happens when they hang on to them for way too long. And so yeah.
I haven't experienced this yet, but a thought that I have, especially when I'm getting there close to the different Indonesian species land, is they're a lot more shy than the rest of the animals I
Yeah,
keep. Messing around with a covered entry, if you're using a nest box, basically a more secure entry for them that they don't like to be seen out in the open. So if you provide them a way to get in and out of that nest box where they can do it stealth like, they don't have to be seen, and my
yeah,
ugly face looking at them all day trying to go, are you laying eggs?
yeah.
um, if you give them a little more secrecy as far as utilizing that nest box, I'm wondering if it'll go a long way. I haven't tested it out yet, but I plan to. The other ones I can just cut a hole in the top of a box and they drop right in and use it.
Right.
That being said, I have had Ackies with whole cage nesting too, that have done just fine. Some of the animals have done both and gone back to one or the other, just depending on the different setups I have them in at the time. Um, let's see. There's so much to cover just about that part of nesting. You mentioned different types of soil, basically
Yeah.
too. You know, um, we're both in California, so what we have is pretty similar to access to what we have. Some of you guys, if you're on the East Coast, you might have things like cypress mulch and whatnot. We don't have access to that in the large amounts that we would need. I mean, you could go to the store and buy a 20-pound bag of cypress mulch for,
A
I don't
lot.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
$20-$30 out here. And you guys out
Yes.
there can go pick it up for, dirt cheap comparatively.
I
So,
got to use a few different things. I can't find one, I guess, ingredient or one, item. I kind of mix a few different things. I really, I'm not too picky, and I kind of know what really works. I kind of mentioned it before. Sandy loam is my go to, like my eventual like result, right?
mhm.
But the start of that would be Eco Earth and sand, play sand, or some peat moss and play sand. The
Mhm.
both mixed together is going to create this sort of sandy, soilish mix after time, after heat,
Right.
moisture, insects have broken it down, and the leaf litter has added to it as well. Stuff like that. It's now this then become rich soil that's kind of a sandy mix to it. That's what I want, and so I don't really. Um, I actually don't understand. Um, some people's, I guess, rave against Eco Earth or some other soils. I think everybody has their preference. So
Mhm.
you may just have to go with what you like. I know like the downfalls of some of them if they get too dry, because like
Yeah.
if sphagnum moss gets way too dry, it's basically super dusty. And
Oh yeah.
same thing with Eco Earth, but it's dusty with big fibers and stuff like that. So they're both not great bone dry, but kept in a consistency where you're literally adding water maybe every couple weeks, something like that. You're um, turning the soil. I mean, I literally get my finger and I do a little test and I just
Yep.
dive it down like maybe several inches as much as I can, and kind of test the moisture. If the soil, kind of falls loose and it's not, moist at all, I'm going to have to revamp that. I'm going to have to re-add to that. But, if it's holding in place and there's now this little divot that I made, even just with my finger, I think that consistency is okay.
That's funny. I wish I could be more specific with you guys about humidity and whatnot and the actual water content of the soil, but for me now it's done by feel. If it feels
Yeah,
right, that's what I go with.
yeah. It's we're trying to translate as much as we can, as far as just like just mm, the way we get a sixth sense of stuff, right? And the way we're kind of doing things. Just, I mean, they might have not noticed that, but I did, and so we're
Yeah.
just, yeah, we're kind of trying to do things where um, it's a way where everybody can kind of grasp on in a, I don't know, in their own handsy feely way. It's not it's not really just like textbook numbers and stuff like that all the time. It's like reading condensation in your cage. Speaking about humidity, with this first question, my cages kind of condensate a little bit on the cooler corners or stuff like that, and those are things I kind of look for. Or if the soil it itself kind of feels pretty moist to the touch, I don't really have to revamp anything or add anything, thing like that. And I'm just paying attention to those just slight little details more. Or if like shedding and stuff like that isn't really flaking off so easy, you're gonna have to adjust to that. And they're all adjustments that we all kind of have to make. It's not something where, oh man, I know it's shedding, and not everybody is cued into, now I have to do things a little bit differently. I have to add a little bit more humidity to the enclosure, maybe change the water a little bit more often, things like that, or dump a little pitcher of water into that heated area, and it draws up the humidity in the enclosure. And so, you kind of have a spike, and then that kind of helps shedding a little bit.
Right. Yeah, a spike.
Right.
Not constant.
Right. Spike. And I don't really have constant wet cages. That's like I kind of mentioned this before. That's not really what I want. I used to think that was, it's Indonesia. It's they're storming all the time. It's wet. And these animals get to get off that. And, they get to hang out in on the limbs and trees which aren't so wet. And so they definitely get to escape that as well. So I think that's something we do take for granted is we think tropical species sometimes just jungle humidity. We got these ideas in our heads of what that is, but there's different places in a tropical environment where you can go and it's actually relatively cool. Or drier.
Or drier. Other things to consider also is that these animals may move throughout the day from a more humid area to a drier area, depending on their needs. And they know in their home range where all that stuff is at. So, I think one of the ideas I'm having reading back through some of the Indonesian dwarf stuff is some of these animals are found actually close to the shore. I'm talking about the peacock monitors for the most part are found near the shore. That's where Spracklin was saying he was finding them. And in tropical areas near the ocean, it can be actually pretty dry compared to the rest of the inland, or as far as humidity levels. There's this breeze that picks up at different times, different thermals and whatnot.
Yep. And you would probably only have to go about 30 minutes to an hour inland to get a major difference,
Right.
It's kind of what I feel here. I grew up on the coast. I kind of always lived by a marina or off the bay, and I got fog in, got normal sea breeze and stuff like that, where that does take a cool down. It does add moisture to the air. Currently now I live an hour and a half ish in from actual like the coast. So, it's much different here. And like, let's say compared to Huntington Beach or something like that, or something that's not, it's a coastline area, but it's just way more humid. But that's not too far from me though. It's only 45 minutes from me though, so it's kind of crazy how the humidity changes just so much. And so,
What about using basically the microclimate, using that mass of whole cage nesting or whatnot versus a nest box as far as a humidity sink? I'm making sense of
the I'm trying to really not confuse myself and people with that question, that last one. But I'm going to take a stab at it. Just give me a second. All right.
No pressure, Kai. No pressure.
Yeah. I don't really understand that one.
Oh, no worries. I think because I'm reading it to you, so I got the words right in front of me. So my take on this is, when you have whole cage nesting, and let's say just as a standard, you got a 4-foot cage, 4x2 cage, and you got a foot of dirt in there, and it is a lot of moisture that you can pull from that soil before the whole thing dries out. So if you have a very minimal or no real venting other than, let's say, sliding glass front to the cage, um, it's going to take a long time for the moisture to come out of that soil. So
Yeah.
yes, it does act like a humidity sink to that degree, but at the same time, it's not. Some people will say it's necessary. In my opinion, it's not necessary if your care adapts to, let's say, a nest. Like in my situation, I can put down those cocoa blocks all across the bottom of a cage just for an inch or two. The animals are running on top of that. It's the cage itself is relatively dry all over, and
Yeah.
then in the nest box, it's
That's
a
where they can
microclimate.
go. Yeah, that's where they
Right.
can go. Now, I guess on another side of this is when you're looking at the max depth of soil, right? And you got to use a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can still have some of these pockets, and it's going to draw your humidity up a lot more. Like I was using those cocoa blocks and just a little bit, and so my animals are from Indonesia, especially the mangrove ones, and they need a lot more humidity, and
Mm-hmm.
so the cocoa blocks just on the soil on the bottom wasn't enough, so I would have to maintain more. But what sucked was in me doing that and essentially maintaining more, which is what I'm saying is like I'm having to spray more often to keep up with the humidity that they need. And their skins were looking more drier. The sheds were kind of getting more stuck on, and so I switched from just the couple inches of cocoa blocks to a bunch of sandy soil underneath those cocoa blocks.
Yeah.
So like what that is it's kind of like snake keepers, how they just have the very surface part dry, or whatever they're using is just a dry part, and that's the dry part that they kind of need to be out in the wild. Is they can't really be on just wet stuff all the time, and so it's simplified with monitor keeping as well, where we're really only applying the option to be really humid.
Mm-hmm.
Taking away the nest bin or taking away a humid hide is not the way to go, though. You don't want to
Right.
stricken the animal from the ability to revamp its skin and go down and get hydrated and stuff like that if it needs to.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have a couple more spots that aren't a nest bin, like for males. Males may not need a huge nest bin. It's just, it'll be a little bit different for the male. It's not honed in as my nesting area because females tend to claim those. Um, and so let's say if you were to have a pair, a male may not always typically be sleeping where that female would be in that nest bin or something like that. If she's expected to sleep there. Um, and so, yeah, there'll be different areas that you may have to apply if you're housing multiple animals. For me, I have the same thing where I'll have one pocket over here, and that's hopefully for just one animal, and then I'll have another, kind of spread that out.
Mm-hmm.
And my cold side or the cooler side where the lamps aren't or furthest away from the lamps, that's considered my cool side. I keep that dry, and I'm trying to do all this in a 6 and 8 foot enclosure. Okay, and some of them are even 3 or 4 foot enclosures or 5 foot enclosures. So I even have less space to work with, and still I'm trying to have a dry area that's furthest away from the lamp. That's my cool area, cool and dry. And then I have my moist pocket area where that's where the lamps are, kind of in that 80-90 degree-ish area. I'm spraying that area because that's where the humidity and all that will derive from the heat, and once I hit it with water, and in the lamps it's going to be dry still, because that's just what lamps do. They just naturally dry stuff out, and so
Right.
you'll get 30 to 50%, sometimes even lower on the humidity there. And some people freak out about that, and I tell them not to, because that's normal.
Right.
That's normal. It's just you want the option, and you want to have the ability to give your animal a chance to go wherever it chooses to really go.
Right. And guys, something I want to touch on real quick. Sometimes we get those humidity slash temperature gauges, and you put that somewhere. You're trying to figure out what maybe your basking spot is, because you're trying to reach this high temperature that monitors need, and so you're putting this probe under that basking spot, and then the humidity probe might be the same probe, or there's all kinds of different configurations for this, or you're sticking it somewhere that's not really relevant, and so to speak, where you might be getting one temperature reading within your cage, and you're adjusting based off of that one temperature or that humidity reading, when it's not really what you need to be looking at, so to speak. I would much rather look at the animal itself and how it's using the cage, and take your cues from what the animal's doing, the condition of the animal's skin. Because you could have, like Kai was saying, you could have a really dry, low humidity area right under the basking spot, but you got humidity in other places, and the animal can seek refuge in those other places, and you're doing just fine. And sometimes I've done this to myself early on. I've kept a super wet cage, and I tell you what, you want to you want to give a Aki a hard time, make them super wet, keep them super wet. They don't like it.
I mean, no, and that's even for an animal that you would think like a mangrove monitor, right? All right, it's from the mangroves. This is a wet area. It's mud, swampy. It's just dense, and it's along the water's edge. So, you would think that the mangrove monitor cages need to be wet, right? And so I used to do that too, and then I ended up with fungal infections or bacteria stuff, or basically a bumblefoot. And what that is just it's the swelling and it's constriction and all that stuff like that within the finger and the fingernail tip and all that stuff like that. And they're blisters that happen there. The same thing with the tails, the bottoms of the animals. I mean, I've even seen it like on the side skirts of the animals too. And so, I mean, I've had that happen with mangrove monitors and even Kimberleys. And so, people thinking, I understand that monitors need good humidity and they need enclosures that trap humidity well and release slow, not. And so you'll have to then kind of gauge on how much it's releasing between the week or every couple weeks, and then adjust by either adding more water or figuring out how you're going to help that humidity that you want to maintain within the enclosure. I still find now to this day that deep soil, for some species, especially ones that you find maybe having hard time shedding. I live where it's really dry now, so if my enclosures are dry, the outside is dry, my home is dry because I need to be, that's a human, that's how we like to live. It's, it's not dense humidity and 100 degrees or 80 degrees in here, it's kind of cool and it's dry in here. And so if all of those are dry, my animal's going to be dry. And so I had to balance the outside temperatures or the outside humidity, my home's humidity, and then just within that room, the humidity there, and then adjust for the cage. So if everything is low humidity where I'm at, my enclosures basically had to support that. And so I had to go back to using deeper soil much more, even if it's several inches, and I can spray it and add pitchers of water to it, add leaf litter on it. It maintains for days. So I don't have to do a whole lot to it. And then the ones that are like a foot and a half deep, I use maybe a pitcher of water every 2 weeks or so, and I just dump water into there, and I kind of turn it up as much as I can. And that's all I'm doing. I kind of don't use just the mister too often. I a little bit here and there, just kind of give the animal a little spritz. But I'm just dumping pitchers of water.
See, for mine, I actually will go in and spray, other than, of course, the humidity box area, or nesting box area. I'll actually go in and spray every other day if I can, outside of work stuff going on. make it over there, and it just gives a spike in humidity for that day, and then they can still retreat to this other microclimate. For my Australian stuff, it works for me right now the way I have it set up. But for my Indonesian stuff, no, crispy. They were not liking that. So I had to change to where even if I have a nest box in with them, I'm still keeping at least, I don't know, 5 inches of a combination of dirt with a layer over it, like Kai was mentioning, of either leaf litter or bark or something on top of that sandy soil, to keep those humidity levels up. So I'm in theory using both, because I'm using kind of a humidity sink in the bottom of that, as well as another retreat. And then, so I have different things going on within the same enclosure there. But man, I'm going to go on a quick tangent real quick. Just with what you were talking about as far as things being all dry for you, Kai. One of the issues I also had was my warehouse was pretty dry throughout the year anyway, up here in the Northern California area. We'd get some days of humidity, but we're rarely over 50%. We're usually in the 20 to 30% where I'm at. And then there were days, not only in the summer, but days in the winter, especially, where we'd be down to 10% humidity. So what I actually had to do was build so imagine I have a roll-up door on the front of this warehouse. I had to put up black plastic, like the painter's 6 millimeter thick plastic, and make a secondary wall inside the warehouse, which then allowed me to run some humidifiers and actually keep the humidity just at I think I was hitting like 45 to 50. I was super happy. And then from there, that was just a base. Then I could adjust to their cages to bump humidity up for different species, or the Australian stuff was fine with that. So if you're in a bedroom and you're keeping something in your bedroom, and like Kai said, it's dry, your temperature is about maybe 70 degrees or so. It might be a good idea for you to, I've shared this with a couple people, build a little rig around the enclosure itself, whether it's plastic like I was using, or I know a lot of people are using these grow tents now. You could actually buy a small grow tent and put your enclosure inside of a grow tent of the appropriate size. And you could actually increase the humidity that way by just playing around with these different ideas, and this way you have like a double walled system almost to reach the humidity levels or temperatures that you need to. But those are just ideas. Like I said, real quick tangent. Just want to get people's minds thinking. All right. You want to go to the next one, or did you have anything else to touch on that question?
No, I think we covered a fair amount. Let me just go over that first question real quick, just to make sure for pros and cons.
Oh, I will. While you're looking that up, I will say one thing, and this is just to be honest with all of you that are out there listening. Some of the reason I use nest boxes is because it's easier for me to dig up a nest box than it is a whole cage.
It is. I mean, it is. Okay. Like I said, it's the convenience and ease on where to find these eggs. It's if my nest box takes in a 6x3x3, my nest box takes up less than 25% of it, and I can just dig there. But if I had full on nest everywhere, like full on soil all over the 6-foot enclosure,
right?
I'm going to be digging for a while. And I mean, and some people have great success with it though. So, it's, I'm not really too thrilled on having to dig far to the left side of the cage that I can't really reach, but I'll do it. I'll do it. So
I have actually gotten impatient thinking there's no way, because I didn't even see the female digging in this area. I have some females that exactly where they nested. They're kind of sloppy about how they cover it. And I have other ones that, I mean, they are just like a ninja. You don't know where all you see is a skinny monitor. I don't know where they nested. You start digging through the dirt and it feels just as compact as when I left it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I get impatient. I'm like, oh man, I read something wrong. I totally screwed this up. You get to that last corner, I have dug too fast, and
Yeah,
I have injured
smash
an
some
egg.
eggs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
All
So
right. For this next question, this one says, how do you keep hatchlings from ingesting boatloads of substrate when feeding stuff like eggs and turkey minced up? Are there any indigestible substrates you would avoid? Um, he says he's super paranoid and ditched the cocoa fiber after reading like other people's losses and stuff like that with using Eco Earth and Cocoa Core. All right, so I guess to get started into this, I kind of want to talk about the animal's whole health to begin with. All right,
yeah.
so if your animal is very well heated, very well hydrated, chances are to be able to pass almost anything it ingested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Agreed.
This is for soils and sand. I've never really had an issue with this. I've had some like leopard geckos, just lick up a bunch of sand before and just have bellies full of it. And I understand that's a scary thing. Um, but, as far as any of the hatchlings that I have, I do keep things a little bit simple for them to eat. Like, okay, they're not chasing a bunch of crickets and stuff like that are on the ground too much. A lot of the roaches are in food bowls.
Mm-hmm.
Crickets, if I'm feeding them crickets, they I see them running around and chasing and might get a handful or get a mouthful of dirt or something like that. But I normally never really worry unless it's like big sharp shards and fragments, and I don't use any of those type of beddings at all, like cypress mulch, those long shards. I don't use any of those type of things or any of those barks at all, just for those purposes. So if I use any of those and they ingested those like a sharp piece, it probably wouldn't be the greatest to have to digest that or have to pass that through. But so that's for me. I just aim for fine, sandy substrate that is easily ingestible if they were to. And I typically
Right.
really try to make sure my animals are really hydrated and heated really well. So if they were to ingest it, because it gets on the food, they're gonna pick up the food item. They're probably gonna go thrash it around, do something, that you're not gonna that you don't want them to do, but they're gonna do it anyways. Um, and for my enrichment periods, man, I just throw in eggs and throw in crawfish all over the enclosure, so they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
get dirt, and it happens. And I don't see an issue ever when my animals are, taken care of and they're healthy, hydrated, and stuff like that. Um, Now, earlier we kind of mentioned this as far as being in the enclosure. Um, PMOS and Eco Earth or core fiber, any of that stuff used left bone dry sucks as a soil or sucks as a bedding.
Right.
But used with moisture, sand, leaf litter works great. I
Right.
don't have an issue with it. Now, as far as getting the animals to not ingest it with eating, like again, I just place food on a dish, a shallow dish, and everything is kind of just they get to eat out of this bowl, this crock bowl, or this plastic plate. Not all the time am I feeding a bunch of loose food items that they get to catch for a couple reasons. I kind of get an idea of what's missing and I judge how much they've eaten. So then I can kind of put that there the next time or kind of gauge on who's doing what, if I can appear at them, if they got fat bellies, if they don't, I get to see, all right, I need to put more food. Because this is like in the sense of babies, right? Because this question is for, having hatchlings ingest a bunch of bedding. Like at the same time, me not using just a bunch of loose foods running around, um, the animals aren't nipping at each other's tails and toes and running
Mm-hmm.
at each other and going crazy during this feeding frenzy. It happens. They take each other's food. They bite each other's heads. They bite each other's toes. and this can end up pretty bad if they kind of get into it over food, or
Yep.
one is just dominating the other one and it's really trying to take its food, and then it starts to beat it up. This happens with hatchlings all the time. You kind of see they have to make a little pecking order, and one of them is going to be the alpha or the dominant one, and the rest are just going to kind of follow in line.
Yep.
Get to bask or get to eat when it's okay for them, and everybody else is already eaten. That type of deal. So I make feeding and stuff like that are really simple for them, rather than having to chase it or fight for themselves. They just come and all eat communally at a little dish, and they pick little tiny pieces up, and yeah, that's my best on trying to keep them from nibbling at soil as well.
If we remember, we'll stick on this topic, but if we remember, we should touch on pecking orders and dominance and less dominant animals. And,
Yeah, that's one I'm still learning more of. Like I can only really tell you just male and female pecking order, but there's female to male pecking order, just cage dominance, or any type of dominance over food, things like that. Little signs that I've read, but
yeah,
like little signs that I'm reading as they're as I'm introducing them or trying to pair them up. I kind of get a lot of different. I get a lot of different stuff all the time, like different behaviors all the time that I'm not really picking up well enough, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
But we'll stick on this one for now, because that could go,
Yeah.
in a bunch of different directions. But there is a lot to that for the people out there listening. There's animals that actually, just like each other, like bonded pairs. And we'll get into that a little later. So keep listening. But to stick on this, as far as like the food items like minced turkey, mice, maybe some of the things we've talked about, such as the filler foods like the chicken hearts, chicken gizzards, those get dragged out in the substrate, even if you have them on a plate or something. They do get dragged around. But I've never had a worry about somebody ingesting something they shouldn't. For the most part, whatever goes down and comes out, and I've never lost an animal because of a ingestion issue such as that for substrate, anything like that. So yeah, right now I don't think about it. Until something changes, it won't be really on my radar and not really a concern. I understand there might have been people out there that have lost animals due to certain things. Maybe you've got in there and you've seen some kind of blockage. So, that's your experience and whatnot. But I honestly, there's a certain group that I'm thinking of that they drag everything away, and it's filthy when they're taking it down, but they eat, never had a problem with them. They're still doing their things. So.
Yeah, I hate that. Sometimes I have a couple females. They'll drop food. I'll pick it up, try to give it to them, and they know it's dirty, and they turn their noses at it. Yeah, I got some picky girls.
I have a few that actually, with larger food items like the grasshoppers, they'll actually pull it apart together. They work on larger food items together. I've seen one drag one kind of around another animal. If it's, I don't know. Sometimes when I cut up, a mouse for these groups, one's pulling on some entrails one way and kind of brings it towards another one. They're pulling it apart and everything. So it's kind of interesting to watch, but they will help each other. Some animals will help each other to take down some of this food, but it gets dragged all over the cage. There's, sand and eco earth and whatever else in there. So, but no, I don't really pay any attention to it. So, anything else you want to touch on with that?
No. No. Yeah, I'm really just my soil is always growing, and my soil is always being added to. It's it sits for a week sometimes, but then there's times when I just unload a bunch of leaf litter on it, break it up even finer. Um, I use banana leaves as well, and they just stay a lot longer, and they stay firm and stay within texture a lot longer than breaking down like some of the other leaves do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's always being added and kind of revamped and touched upon. If you're not, then you may find yourself with um, those low spikes in humidity or problems shedding when it comes time to it.
Yeah. There was a guy near me that had a large colony of Ackies. They basically converted an entire shed just for Ackies. He was using whole cage nesting at first, but then for his own purposes, he switched to like several nest boxes in this large colony. And I think after about 6 years of just great work, counting on these animals to drop, every year at certain times, they stopped dropping in these nest boxes. Some were retaining eggs, some were scattering, and nothing else changed in their enclosure what he was doing year to year. But what come to find out, he actually changed the substrate within these nest boxes,
Yeah.
and the animals went back to normal. So he theorized a little bit that maybe a substrate can go stale. Now he wasn't adding things like
Yeah.
leaf litter, like you're adding to it or I'm adding to it, that gets broken down. So I don't know. I haven't had it myself. I haven't experienced myself. But it's just an interesting thought. It doesn't need to be refreshed, so to speak. Can the substrate go stale, where it kind of deters the animals a little bit from nesting in there? I don't know.
Yeah, for me, for sure. And what it is it's that amount of moisture within it. If
Yeah.
that depletes that soil and stuff, and you start to dig down, and you can think about it like this: like you're a kid on the beach and you're digging these little tunnels, right? And you're kind of just digging down a little further, and those little holes that you're building and those little caves, they're holding place, right? They're holding
Mm-hmm.
place because there's moisture within that sand there, right? And that's the same type of consistency that you're trying to have for these nest bins. Is when you dig and you dig in burrows, even with your hand, and you're kind of making a tunnel, it should sort of form and hold place. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what you're really wanting.
I'll read off question 3 for us real quick. We move on. Okay. So question 3: what humidity are you running during incubation? In this person's experience, he had some clutches fail at 86 degrees Fahrenheit and about 95% relative humidity. He mentions that the clutches looked a little something was looking wrong with the first clutch, but the second and third looked pretty good and tanked in the incubator. He's also thinking maybe his male might have some issues getting it done. But
Yeah,
we actually did talk with this. We threw this around with
yeah.
Eric
Well,
a little
we
bit, and
we can go back a little bit on a slight of a backstory because this is relating to me, and I was essentially using myself as an example for him while we're talking in this discussion too between the three
right.
of us right earlier. And so, um, 6 months ago, or within the winter time last year, I basically killed a bunch of Kimberly eggs and Kimberly's. Yeah, so
Me
lost
too.
lost females, lost eggs, and essentially just really stubbed myself in the foot. Hard pill to swallow in this one, and really my eggs went all the way, or well, okay, clutch one went all the way, and babies were essentially fully formed. But at 70, 80 days, I started to let the dense humidity within the actual incubating container evaporate so fast. Either I was had too big of venting holes, started to vent too soon, vented too much because I was just trying to vent because that's what people were telling me to do at the last leg of incubation. Now, my current area and where I live is dry. It's really bone dry. It's maybe 15, 20. 25% humidity, and most of the time it's even smaller than that, or lower than that. And I had to figure out where this gentleman was from. And so after asking him, he's also from California and he's from the Mojave. Now, where I live in San Gabriel Valley and where he's at, it's not very far from each other. We're about maybe an hour and a half ish, 2 hours roughly on distance between each other. And he's even somewhere that it's even drier. So, what I have a feeling is he went through the same thing that I was going through. Essentially using a fan, not having enough humidity, and or like a water cup, something that's generating humidity within that loss that the fan is creating as well. As the fan is on and it's running, it's basically taking humidity and pushing it out as well. And so things are slowly evaporating from the container if you're using too big of vents or stuff like that. So it's just a balance game now, because you still need the fan to eliminate hot spots, but the fan is also going to dry stuff out if you have it too vented. And so this gentleman doesn't live too far from me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is exactly the same thing that I was going through. I had eggs essentially fail on me, eggs that I thought were really great, and they basically started to concave from underneath and on the sides a little bit. Not exactly just on top, and everything else is still firm. But really, it's like it started to indent from underneath, and so I did a lot of tricks. Added more water into the thing, possibly saved a couple eggs, but still they died when they went the distance. And so really, I kind of everything this gentleman was saying. His name is Eric, and I kind of related to all of that. Everything just fit to the T, And I even thought that my mail was shooting blanks because these eggs would come out fine, but not go the distance, or come out from just, come out with on the shitty end of stuff, And so really, really made me think about what I was doing, and just try to have, I guess, things more played out where I know the mail's good, and or playing with the humidity and moisture. I'm really trying not to lose focus on everything else that's possibly interfering with the humidity within there. The outside temperatures in the house outside, those are also going to be conflicting with what I need to generate within the incubator. So now I have a cup down there, but my current incubator is almost full. So it's a third or halfway full, and I have eggs kind of spread out all over. I even have grasshopper incubating in there, so that also adds up to the moisture that's released from each of those containers, right? Now I haven't had an issue with overwatering yet, so I haven't, because now the thing is full and there's humidity everywhere. Do I really need that extra cup of moisture? And I think I do, but what sucks is that you have to learn and kill eggs.
It's true.
Kill eggs to know if you're doing it right or not.
And each person, wherever you live, you have to adjust to where you're at. No one has the magic recipe to hand to you unless they are, your next door neighbor, really. Your house might be built different. You might get drafts through your house in certain areas that you're not really aware of. All these things you have to adjust for. And so, another thing that a lot of the incubators we like to use now that are available now, they have this glass or plexiglass front, right? Which is great. We're neurotic, all of us. We like to look in and see the eggs. Of course, they're not doing anything but being eggs sitting in there.
Catches draft.
Right. Yeah. But there's a temperature difference between the front of that window than towards the back or the sides of the cage, I've noticed it because in a lot of these setups, the fans are somewhere near the back or the heating elements near the back. And the cool end of that is actually that glass front because it's being affected by the temperature in the room. So you're getting condensation on that glass front. So you're actually thinking that your humidity looks good, especially if you have that little probe stuck to the window right there.
Yeah.
All that condensation is collecting right there. but the back of the
It's a
incubator is
it's a
dry.
misread. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
misread.
yeah,
Yep.
and so it's throwing you off, and you're getting this, conglomeration of differences inside maybe whatever container you have these things in. Um, and I really noticed. Well, just got to go for it. I noticed it within the sim containers I was using because eggs at the back were drying out a little more than eggs at the front. So I would have to do things to adjust for this problem, like putting a wet paper towel over which was recommended by someone, thankfully, to me during this process where I was having issues, was to put the wet paper towel over the eggs that have started denting a little bit, and sure enough, it worked, but it increased the humidity, the moisture available to those eggs, and
Yeah.
they soaked that up, and they filled back out, or they stopped deflating, basically.
Yeah.
And we're still fine. Um, but yeah, it's just for each thing you for those of you out there that are going to want to breed, you're just going to have to play with some stuff, and it's a long incubation period for monitors. There's no easy way around it. So,
Yeah.
but talk about some of the other stuff you've had to. I know we talked today earlier, so it's just kind of recapping on a personal conversation that we had about this. But um, I think you used was it you were poking holes in water
The sim?
bottles? No,
Oh,
no, no.
what do
I
you
could have
mean?
I could have got it totally wrong. I thought you were poking pinholes in like water bottles or something to add humidity into the incubator itself, but I could have read that
Oh no,
all wrong.
I just had pinprick holes inside my my sim lids.
Ah, I see. I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I used both of those actually. So in a lot of the lids that I have pre-existing holes, and then now at the with the advice, basically talking to Alex of Sim Container one day, is I had those holes in there, and then I had tape over the holes. So
Yeah,
then
same.
yeah, so then you could just lift up the tape over the holes if you needed to air them out a little bit, and you didn't really even have to take the top off and try to poke the holes through there and everything.
Yeah, you can't make new holes, you have to melt holes.
Oh yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. You can't. So you have to heat up a little fork or heat up a little like a um a paper clip or something like that. Get
Right,
your little torch out or whatever, make your hole, and yeah,
right.
that's what I had to do.
And what we mean is that if you get to that point, you're messing with these sim lids. They are made out of some kind of like
They're
crazy.
durable.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
durable.
they're durable.
You can't just use a screw and poke a hole through it. You do have to melt a hole in there, and it's
Yeah,
insane the amount of work you'll put into sim lid trying to make holes in it. But so
yeah.
just get a jump
So
on it and melt the holes, like Kai said.
yeah, getting staying on to this incubating question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, man, I hope they don't kill me. Hey,
Do
John
it.
and Alex, I love you guys. All right, but okay, so
Here it comes.
the sim container, everybody needs to understand that it's not a one shoe fits all type thing. It
Mm-hmm.
can be with your quick adjustments. That's all I have to say. There's many ways to use this container, even without the little pinprick holes or with a bunch of holes, or people like me. I have some with the grid and like wet perlite and vermiculite, and then I have um, without the grid on that that Pangea clay stuff,
Yeah.
right? And then I have another one with the grid and wet dirt, and so they all work. It's not really a need to have a 1-to-1 ratio like you would if you were to set it in perlite or vermiculite. And I really just kind of have the bottom soupy. It's not really like if you were to grab a handful, you can still wring out some water.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of just how much moisture is down there. With the with the little pebbles that I'm using, that I kind of just make sure that it's wet. All the water goes to the bottom naturally, and the eggs sit perfectly on top, still in a sim container, but no grid.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think uh, people that say that they've failed with the sim container, um, maybe some adjustments might not have been made to, as you're failing, like as I've failed, I've had to make adjustments with the Sims.
Right.
That's the whole truth, and I don't want to lie to anybody about using this tool, or just because these guys are my friends or anything like that. It's real. It's how you're now taking this tool and utilizing it in a way that it's going to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you just don't grab a sim and think it's going to work for you, and then you know kind of blame the sim if there's issues with your eggs. There's a lot of things that come into play, and
Right.
if you're not adjusting and really having all that math, where it's humidity, pressure, heat, moisture level, actual dense moisture, not just humidity that's saturating the air, but like actual moisture and wetness, all that is applied into incubating these eggs.
Right.
And you want to adjust to that. Alex and John, I love you guys. I'm sorry if I the sim is great. I use the sims all the time.
I do too. And for me with the Sims is I pretty much use them on everything so far. Um, and the way that I got around it was I picked, okay, I'm going to use the Sims and I'm going to use that clay material. It's a Pangea hatch. It's a turf something. I can't
Yeah,
remember what it is now,
right.
but you can find it. And so I said, okay, this is the product I'm going to use. I just decided on this medium. The reason I decided on using that one is because you can actually sterilize it and
Yeah,
you can boil it, and so I can get familiar with the same product and use the same product, so I can adjust for any. My mindset was on long haul that I might mess up 2-3 clutches in the process to make some advancements.
right.
So with that mindset, I said, I'm going to figure this out in the Sims. So I wet it down. I don't leave standing water, but I mean, the material is pretty wet. I kind of soak it first a little bit. And then I just basically hands, or I've even used like a
Yeah,
spatula or a spoon with a slotted spoon,
yeah,
wring some water out and scooped it into the Sims. And that's what I've been using now for, I mean, multiple clutches. I'm using it on the Sand Monitor eggs. I think I'm at about 100 and maybe close to 170 days now on those. Everything's looking great. I've had to add water one time, but we're talking, these eggs might go 200 days. For
yeah.
the dwarf monitor eggs, that usually go between 100, 110 days. I feel confident now that I'm at the point where I can just set them and forget them. But
Yeah,
that's, go ahead.
if you're kind of thinking about when we revamp that soil, it's if you're paying attention to it, kind of you have the whole as the from start to end in one hatch and stuff like that. So then I kind of break it down into like fours, right? Basically the first leg, the second leg, the third leg, and the last leg of incubation. Within your second going into your third, and your third into your fourth leg of incubating, make sure that your water has been revamped, or you're paying attention to that and it's still fine. Okay. Now what I see and what I do myself. Okay, so the reason why these containers and the incubator condensate, okay, is because there's heat inside that incubator with humidity and moisture, right? And when the cold room is kind of, uh, I guess, causing draft and gripping the incubator itself, that then creates that whole pressure of creating condensation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so these egg containers, as they go through different temperatures, I find that they always condensate when the incubator is warm and the room is really cold. That's when I find them condensating the most, and that's pulling moisture out of the actual soil and in the air, and then it's condensating on the top or the wall. You're going to wipe that off. You're also going to open the thing, and that's going to take out moisture and the actual humidity that's inside the container. So just be aware of what you're doing as well. Okay. So every time that you need to do that, because you obviously don't want water droplets dropping onto your eggs either. So this is a thing where you can mess up this process too, kill eggs. And you obviously don't want to be venting too much. You basically lift the top, wipe the lid, close it, and call it a day. Don't like sit there, take a million pictures. I'm telling you, because this is me. Don't sit there and take
doing it for the gram.
Yeah, doing it for the advertisement and all that stuff like that. You take a quick snap if you need to. It's hard to resist. You want to. These are cherished moments, and you definitely want to take pictures of them, but be swift.
Right.
30 seconds, a minute, you can all make this happen within that time frame. Wipe it, pop it back in, and it's like nothing changed. But going back to this topic a little bit, condensation is least when the room temperature and the incubating temperature of the inside match. When they're very similar, condensation happens the very least. Okay, so that's what I've had to learn in the last year or two with just hatching and incubating myself.
My experience, I do get some condensation on the lids in my sim containers, but what I've noticed is they're not, in my situation, they're not affecting the eggs. Those water droplets don't seem to be falling and dropping on the eggs, because I've sat in there and I've looked at these. I'm waiting for a drop to come, and the drop never comes. So I'm just sitting there looking at water. And what I realize, as soon as I go to lift the lid, then it all drops onto the egg. So
yeah. I have to be careful, and I tilt it, and then I let the gravity take its thing, and have the condensation over. But sometimes that doesn't work out well either. So
yep. And then you're in there with a little Q-tip or a little paper cloth and dabbing eggs and whatnot. But I mean, the other thing I use with the eggs also is for my setups, I leave open containers of water, basically a bowl of water on a shelf in the incubator. And it does dry out because there's two fans. And the one I have set up, there's an upper fan and a lower fan. So it is circulating air. And so the sim containers have a lid it's sealed. It's not airtight, but it's sealed on there. So to slow down the fans in the incubator itself from pulling too much moisture out of this substrate we use, I've put in the bowls of water. So I know when those are starting to get low and get dry, then I am adding more water into these bowls. I'm still watching the color of the substrate in there. And that's another good thing I like about this product. You can tell when it's wet or when it's starting to dry out real easy. And so that's the way that I adjust in my situation to accomplish what I need to accomplish. Now this incubator also has a solid front. There's no
window,
and the material on the front is just as thick as the rest of the incubator. It's about, I would say, 1.5 inches thick all the way around on this thing, because it's got some foam inside and whatnot, some insulation material. But I've found something that works for me. So again, for the people out there listening, you have to find something that works for you and works in your climate. When I was using the one with the window on the front, a good tip of advice I actually got from talking to Alex over there at Sim Container was to stuff the incubator in a closet, put a towel over the front of the incubator. And then I even took some duct tape, because the way the PVC was from the heat, it was starting to bend a little bit. So I was actually taking some reusable tape and putting it around the seam of the front door to help lock in some of this moisture and whatnot. And it worked fine for me. That's what I had to do. It looked funky, but it's what I had to do to accomplish getting those eggs to go the distance, and it worked.
The changes. Yeah. The slight changes.
Oh, and real quick, while we're talking about that too, Um, understand that 100 days is a long time, 200 days plus, even longer. Your area, whatever area you live in, is probably going to go through at least a season change, if not two. You have to get used to how that works, and yeah, and figure that out as well, and adjust
having eggs in dead summer sucks.
Shut everything off, just put them
You
on.
know, when there's like rolling blackouts here, they got to turn
Man.
off the electricity for a certain amount of hours, things like that. Man, some ways that I have learned to adjust to those situations. Typically, it's going to be hot, so trying to keep them warm isn't the issue. It's keeping them from overheating is the issue. So you might drop a cold water bottle in there or something like that, or a cool pack to drop it in there and kind of balance out the temperatures when you have issues like that where power's turned off or there's rolling blackouts or issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's another, California, we get those rolling blackouts, and man, talk about a puppy.
Yeah, it's really like, hey, I'm trying to, hatch some expensive lizards out here. You're trying to just kill them all, right?
Right. So those reptile heat packs that we use for shipping, believe me, I got a whole stockpile of those right now.
Yeah.
I ran out for a little bit, but
if you need to throw those in there, and
yeah,
the kind of all you need is just one heat pack, really, one or two heat packs, and you can kind of gauge it.
Yep.
And you obviously don't want to be going in there regularly too. And typically, you only have to stress out for a few hours.
Right.
But sometimes it's a day or so, and you've had a blackout.
And another thing is eggs can I feel a lot more comfortable with eggs getting cold. If power goes out and they actually get cold or colder, say they drop into the 70s, I don't really freak out about it. If they go up past like 90 for a prolonged amount of time, I start freaking out. So you got to go get some ice, do what you got to do. Open that door, throw on a fan in the room, just make sure the top of whatever container is sealed, and do what you got to do. But just some of the things that we've had to adjust for. Right. Did we cover it? I think
we covered everything.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you want to read question number 4?
Yeah. All right. Question number 4 is minimum enclosure size. I see lots of people recommending you build a Taj Mahal for a single Aki. His words, all right, not mine. His words. And is that a yay or nay, or what are some of the other nuances to this answer involving other priorities?
Go ahead, Kai. I'll get myself in trouble. Go ahead.
No, I mean, let's be real about it. I don't throw little lizards in big cages anymore. Yeah, anymore. Kind of just keep it simple, especially for their babies starting off. For me, it's just getting a understanding of the animal, feeding it, having its normal regular routine. It's simple. It's very simple to keep smaller baby monitors taken care of well enough with just a little bit of heat, small little microclimate area where it is humid and the rest of the enclosure is kind of drier. That's how I keep all my babies, whether they're like Akis or something like that, or the mangrove monitors or Kimberly rocks. Kind of keep them all relatively dry at the very beginning, and just a couple humid hides, and that's it. And that enclosure is 2x2, 18x18 ish, maybe something like even like 15x15 if I really need to, but that's only for a very short time for really tiny babies. But you're not really trying to want to look for a 6-inch lizard in a 4 or 5 foot cage every time you need to. Now there's some people that have great luck with throwing them in a big enclosure, and then you get to really you have a great pet that's just out and about all the time, and it isn't hiding all the time. But man, if you do happen to have an animal that's just hiding all the time and you're not really able to keep track of it as a baby, you really lose track of that animal, Now, I also want to make sure that, like, as we're talking about, these very precise parts of the enclosure, right?
Right.
Um, Not everybody is doing that bit of research on how to heat a ton of soil. So,
Right.
when you're recommending somebody use a foot of soil, there's stagnant soil that the lizard's not going to use if it's too cold or too wet, or you're not using it the right way. So, um, with that, from just having it a simple setup, something that you can kind of grass with several inches of soil, stuff like that is fine. Um, but when you get into really larger volumes of stuff, that's something acquired as you learn and you're kind of just going through the motions of stuff.
Yeah.
um, I don't think anybody, I mean, sure, I can tell everybody, hey, use a bunch of soil, but man, like, hope you understand what you're doing first.
Right.
How you're supposed to heat that, how that's supposed to really all work together, and accommodate for your lizard shedding wise. Humid hide derives humidity and draws humidity within the enclosure and stuff like that. Now I do still believe that animals should have more than just a half log and a stick and a water bowl. I definitely recommend much more, especially the necessities. Vertical hanging, horizontal hanging, basking platforms, elevated hides, and a little water dish. You can have a cool spot underneath that water dish by putting it on a platform when you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to tackle all the little necessities. Um, for example, right, for my little baby Kimberly's, um, I have a couple flats that I pile up underneath the heat lamp, and then it's maybe several inches from the heat lamp, and then I have on the walls, kind of like this. This hammock that is just on the wall, though it's not really strung up like a hammock is, and so they get to hide behind that. And I have a couple of those just lined up on the cage wall, and they're utilizing that, you know. And so I'm applying other things for them to do rather than just having a one dimensional cage, just soil and a half log and that, going.
Absolutely. And this is something you actually reminded me of not too long ago, Kai. Was that vertical space on the walls there? I had an
Yeah,
issue where I, in one particular setup, I got a lot of different little setups. I got a lot of different little babies, and I overlooked something simple, was just giving animals a place to kind of get dry, get away from
yeah,
the substrate, hang off of something
yeah,
vertically while staying secure and hidden, and the way that I set it up. And it was, I had different material in all the other cages that accomplished the same idea. And it was this one cage that it was funny because I told Kai that, yeah, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm not used to this. I don't experience this, kind of
yeah,
get a little full of myself, maybe not remembering some basics. And Kai's like, oh, you probably got, I think, whatever you said was exactly what I'm looking at in the cage. You're like a couple pieces of bark on the ground, and the little basking site over here, and I'm looking at the thing. It's like whatever I had is exactly what Kai just drew a mental picture of in front of me. I'm like,
yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah,
So I wasn't using the space effectively. I didn't set it up so that the animals could use the space effectively to accomplish all that they needed. Everything else is fine. I really just had to add that vertical piece, like you were saying, for them
yeah.
to get up away from the ground.
Right, and,
They
and
wanted
it helps, basically, because they're gonna, if you keep it simple, I know, I understand that's kind of what I'm saying is, provide the necessities, but still kind of keep it simple. Like, you just don't want to pile a bunch of stuff, and then if you ever have to go through it, you got to really rip everything apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean by simple. But you
Yeah.
still want to provide the necessities, though. All right,
Hmm.
next
I
question.
Yeah. Let's move on. You
Yeah.
handle that.
All right.
No, let me be honest with the people out there real quick. Um. So when I first started keeping few years back, 2018. Okay. I had kept before this, like, good Lord, 20 years ago, like between 15 and 20 years ago, I was keeping animals. I did what everybody was doing at the time. I built my own cages to a certain degree. I was using those cattle troughs. Um, I look like a feed store at one point. There's cattle troughs everywhere. And for other reasons, mainly being young and dumb about other things, I didn't get really any success out of those animals I was keeping back then. That wasn't the setup necessarily. Some other things I wasn't achieving within the setup or supporting the animals in the ways that I needed to. But so when I went to get back into these animals, it was actually in conjunction with my son's 5th birthday. We set up the idea was to get a group of Ackies, young ones, and set them up as their babies in a cage on a dresser in his room so that he could watch them, and with the idea that we are going to adjust later on into something bigger as the animals grew. Right, we're just going to get them in there, set it up cool for a 5-year-old. We got the fake dinosaur skull in there, the fake cactus looking plant, and then a few other things in this 2-foot Exoterra cage. So we did that. We accomplished that. Now I had 2 heat lamps on there. Okay. I had a ceramic heat lamp. I had a UV with the LED combo strip. And then I had another CHE basically on top of this 2-foot cage. Now there was a lot of heat coming out of there. True. Okay. But at
those bad boys,
it was, but at the same time, I was adjusting for this by, at the time, putting water in the substrate, pretty regularly, and then spraying them twice a day. So they still had primarily they had an open top. I did cover a portion of the top, but there's still the openings where basically the lights are sitting. And I was accomplishing by letting the cage heat up in the morning, spraying it in the morning. And then about an hour before turning the lights off, I'd missed it again. So I provided them that. And also I used cork bark, but the way I used the cork bark or stuff within cork bark tubes created different gradients down from where these heat lamps were hitting. So the animals were able to adjust their heat. And the other thing that I did was there was even the fake T-Rex skull I packed with some substrate under there, some leaf litter or moss. And I was really dousing that when I'd go in and water that. And then I would let a heat lamp like kind of have it near enough and kind of buried. So it was actually like a little heat sink into the soil off of this skull. Skull. I changed that to a piece of slate or a skinny brick or something later on.
Yeah.
But so that's how it was set up, and honestly, it worked great. It's still working. It's still in the room. We rotate animals through it now, and but it works. Okay. So this is where, man, I'll share this here, I guess, but I got beat up about this. So I came from the point where the full intention was for me to set these animals up in a larger cage as we progressed. Now, in my mind, getting back into this after being like years away from animals, I'm thinking this is going to happen on my timetable, right? This is going to be about a year old. Then they're going to magically become adults because I think that's when they need to become adults. And we'll adjust at that time into something bigger. So I'm putting together my own collection of different snakes at this time. And other than the daily care, watering and feeding these animals, I really wasn't paying too much attention to them. I was just letting them do their thing. And then one day, I think they're about 8 months old or so. There's an infertile egg on the surface, right? I got 3 animals in this 2-foot Exoterra. There's an infertile egg on the surface. I go digging, and I think there was a total of 8 eggs, right? And I'm freaking out. I need to get them in something bigger. Stat, this is happening now. Blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking I missed the boat. Thank God she didn't get egg bound and die. Now, that's what's in my own head. My wife has to point it out to me. She's like, "What's wrong with the girl?" I said, "Nothing, thankfully." It's like, "She's looking great, right?" "Well, yeah, she's looking good." Well, she's been doing fine this whole time in this cage, in this setup. She looks good now. She's back to feeding and she's alert and everything. Why don't you just let her rebound back in this cage? And it was like, hey, that that's actually a great idea, you know? So let's
Yeah.
try it. And she did. And then she went on to cycle again and lay another one in the same. So I share that story. Believe me, I put this out there on social media when it happened, and I was brand new to keeping again, and I got just eviscerated. And I understand. The thing was, I was trying to explain is I understand. I was sharing people what happened, and
Yeah.
it was never my intention to do all that. It's just I got caught up in doing things. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I bring that up now because the fact of the matter is, for people out there listening, a 2-foot cage can work. I don't recommend it right now to somebody that's just getting into this and doing their thing. But it can. You can accomplish all that you need to for some animals within a small space, okay? But what that taught me, what I took from that was this is what's usable. These temperatures are usable. This, and I started adjusting my thinking off of that and expanding that to larger cages themselves and how I approach setting up cages for the future. And it worked. It continued to work. So do I recommend that? No. Has it happened again since? Yes. We've had other animals cycle through that cage and have done the same thing. But again, usually as soon as I'm seeing that or as soon as that happens, we're usually transferring them out and bringing the next round of babies in. It really is just something here for the family to enjoy because they're not always with me at the warehouse. But it can happen.
Yeah. And that's where basically just pick up from there and learn.
Yeah. Yep.
Just,
Now that, it's funny that on the other side of that is that I went, as soon as I knew I was getting sand monitors, I built these full walk-in cages for them. So it wasn't like there was rhyme or reason, or I was trying to prove a point with keeping animals in a small enclosure. And now most everything at the warehouse is in, I would say 4 foot. If they're not a 4 foot, like by 2 foot footprint, it's like a 3 foot by 3 foot or some odd number, just whatever I had available to build something out of. So I don't know if that's really answering the question, but do animals need a Taj Mahal? No. The fact of the matter is there's probably some dwarf monitors you could breed in a 50-gallon drum if it was set up the right way.
Yeah.
But do we want to give our animals more? Yes. Does it make it more enjoyable for us to do so in those situations? Absolutely. Who wants to look at a 50-gallon drum sitting it? Well, you know what? Hold on a second. Let me catch myself. I use that as an example without even thinking. I think Mike Stefani has like
Drum
this
setups.
Yeah, this kick-ass setup made out of a barrel or something. So
Yeah.
I take that back. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. I've
You're
seen
a master.
the blue barrels as well. I've seen
Yeah.
those cut and a plexiglass placed in the front of those. Yeah, I've seen that makeshift setup too.
Yeah. Yeah, and they will work, man. Different setups work, okay?
Yeah.
I know
You
people
just got-
that are doing things in they're doing things their own way, and a lot smaller setups that they don't even share, but they're breeding animals. They are having full reproductive events with healthy individuals on
Yep.
the other side of it and healthy clutches, but they don't share their success, unfortunately, with a lot of people because they know they'll get blasted just because people want to make judgments off of what they see, not what's
Right.
actually what the keeper's actually doing. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's many little things that work that just aren't, what do you say, conventional.
Right.
Yeah.
So I I might be getting a little long-winded on this topic, but for instance, some people will say, if you have one Aki, we got this like whatever. Somehow we got this size of a 4x2 is that good starter cage, the minimum, right? And that you will want to build a 6x2. I see some individuals who get really excited about their first animal and they want to build an 8x8. Great, but you need to know how to set that up first so that it's usable. Okay. So just because an animal has the space doesn't mean you're going to keep that animal occupied with its life or what it's an 8x8 space, it's going to get used up. It's going to know every inch of that just as it would a smaller cage. And if that cage isn't usable, it might not even travel to those other points or run across them real quick and just come back to, where the cage is usable. So some ideas, I don't know, but I think you do stuff like this already, Kai, is that if you want to stimulate your animal in a cage, instead of thinking that a bigger cage is the way, maybe change the items within that cage. Maybe bring in new items that have different smells to them. In my instance, there is always the cross contamination, but I'm pretty comfortable with my own collection and the health of the different animals. I'll take a log out of another setup of Akis and where there's another male, another female, and I'll change the bark between the two enclosures. They go nuts over this thing. You see the scenting behaviors by the male. You see the tongue flicking, investigating going on, for a while. You've just given these animals something to do for however long till they get bored of it. And simple tricks like that, can actually change up or stimulate different behavior. Give your animal something to do much more than just a big blank cage would. So,
accommodating for vast amounts of soil. That's a big one for me. If you can't heat that, or if your cage is sitting on a cold floor, basement, tile, and that's gonna now your cage might be warm, but the soil and the ground itself will suck the heat out of that and basically make the soil really cold and not useful, stagnant soil, an area that's not really usable. That's what I've noticed. So keeping it just as far as like growth with your animal, building a relationship and all that stuff like that, getting to understand it, having the smaller workable cage, not tiny, but workable, and as you grow, you understand what the lizard needs, things that are definite stuff that you have to do to the enclosure that you'll have to accommodate for the big one. Then you grow into that. You kind of think, all right, now this is what I need to apply, and how do I apply it? That's the growth into it. Because, from when you started off and then when you're growing into intermediate and then you've had it for years and years, it's just a lot different. You'll end up doing things that accommodate you better, but at the same time accommodate the lizard as well.
Right. Another thing that comes up with that sometimes is I see people want to add a lot of vertical space to cages, which is absolutely great. And I like it too. But understand, if you're going to use vertical space, don't necessarily just put one heat lamp up at the top of the top branch in this cage, because then the animal has to use that one spot to bask to get its needs. If it's a shy animal, it might choose not to do that, and it could end up stressing itself out, getting sick. The other thing is, if you're not heating, like Kai said, you're not heating the soil, you're not keeping up the ambient towards the lower end of the cage to a certain degree, it might not use the rest of the cage effectively. You might run into digestion issues where it can't burn off the food it's eating. Other health issues come from that. You need to adjust your own setup accordingly. So do I wish I could have every animal in mine in the huge display enclosure that's functional? Absolutely. And some do have huge enclosures. But other ones, and for certain animals, it's just easier to keep them in something a little more Spartan and smaller.
Easier to maintain. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, maintenance and building a relationship with the animal. It's major key. Keeping it simple.
Right. Do we got any is there any other question in here?
Yeah, this is the last one.
Okay.
All right. So this one is basically a question of why we choose monitor lizards. You know, what about them? Even after all the issues, heartaches, and trying to figure stuff out, what makes it all worth it? Uh, is it the love for the animal, love for the process, or both, or is it something else? Man, I guess I'll start with this one. The intelligence is one thing. Trying to figure them out is kind of never ending. So for me, I love the mental challenge a little bit or a lot of it, and I'll forever kind of always be really interested in with these animals. For me, it really started off with like the crocodile hunter, watching like Komodo dragon stuff, and really just
Yeah.
dang, these are some awesome lizards, And then you kind of go through raising many different stuff from geckos and iguanas and beardies and agamids and stuff like that, and you kind of figure out what you like and what you don't like. And for me, it's the monitors were always the interesting stuff, and um, it's just that extra intelligence. They're aggressive. I always wanted to like tame stuff, and there
Hmm.
was this now monitor that came across this pet store that I was once volunteering for, and I would want to work with it, and try to get it to be social like everybody wants. And this was some now monitor that came in really mean, and I got it to be really docile around me mostly. And so it's just those challenges. I mean, they're all. I guess many people have um, like what draws them to the monitors the most. Me, it's just about everything with them. Still, like even feeding to this day, feeding is just ravenous, like feeding some dinosaur. It's kind of savage. It's crazy. I get a lot of excitement out of watching it, and obviously, it's that whole behavior. You get the most behavior when they're eating. Sometimes, eating and breeding. You get
Hmm.
those all natural behaviors that you kind of watch and you want to see out of your animal. Um, yeah. Let me see here the second part of this or other parts of this question. Yeah. Even okay. So I've had some heartaches losing females. Not even just this last year, but I would say 10 years ago when I was doing, um, or I was trying to do Flavie Argus Goldie Eye crosses myself, and I I had this female that I got from Lance Payton, and then I got a male after we figured out that it was a female, and a year and a half old. I bought a male from him that he was selling, and really tried to pair them up, and I killed them, or I killed the female because she ended up just having egg complications developing, and my nesting and stuff like that was just sandy stuff. It didn't have any moisture in it, so it was just kind of bone dry. And I don't think she took to that as well, and so I ended up kicking the bucket, and really that took a loss for me. But as a keeper, it also like impacted me a lot. Like, damn, what am I? I love keeping monitors, and I talk a big game, and I'm helping people out. But am I really doing this stuff right?
Oh yeah.
And I can help a ton of people all I want, but am I doing the right service to my animals too? And so really getting down to the core of why I keep and what I do now. And it's basically grown to this now, like falling in love with helping people with their animals and making sure that the animals that are kind of suffering a little bit have a better chance and all that things like that. Right. And so they kind of add up to, just your whole morals and growth with these animals. And so now that I'm doing them years later, oh man, it's applying things that I I was using back then to now, and trying to just not make those mistakes again. And even though now it's 10 years later, I'm still sort of fiddling and fumbling a little bit with some of these same mistakes, and it's a little bit different for all these animals. I'm trying to pick it up and making sure that I support them enough, making sure that I'm kind of paying attention to things as I need to, and and as I move forward with having many females that are regularly laying for me, I'm kind of like giving myself a thumbs up, like, yeah, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't die. That's whether it's a parthenogenic clutch, whether it's a clutch from breeding, whether it's just duds being actually laid and not scattered over the enclosure. I take pride in that, seeing that at the end result. Sorry,
Yo,
that's my cat in the background.
are you alive?
So I just make sure that all right, man, my females are all good, and you know, I I really I really take that as all right. I'm doing stuff right by them. Now I'm not killing. I'm basically not killing them, and I'm having somewhat of a success now. So
Yeah.
definitely taking that as a good thumbs up to what I'm currently doing. Now as far as like what stuff I kind of really love and what makes it all worth it is I have this major thing where I basically flip out, freak out. Alan's actually had to cater to me flipping out last year, and basically having to deal with me calling at 2 or 3 in the morning, or having to just just me being frantic about stuff, right? And so when I'm going through that, I really take that and like take it to the heart. It's like, man, like I'm trying to figure this out. And then once we're playing out all the scenarios, playing what we can, or applying what new stuff we think is going to work by just word of mouth through other keepers, sharing information, and then testing that out. And that end result is, all right, did I make that change? That right there for me is seeing all that form and flow. um Man, it really lights me up inside,
Mm-hmm.
and just science working its thing, even if it's something simple as getting the shedding off of the tail tips, or having the toes perfect, or things like that you want integrity in the animal that you're having and selling and producing, and all that stuff. um and so that's one thing, and that's for my growth and learning. And the other thing is actually hatching out little monitors lizards.
Yeah.
That feeling never. Whether it's, well, I'm hatching out awesome stuff. So these are all my dream animals. I'm not gonna lie. I've been keeping and failing, and trying to progress and all that stuff like that. And I have animals that I was jockeying and wanting since I was a kid, a teenager. Once I figured out how to get on the internet, get on kingsnake.com and look at all these pictures and forums, and so I was telling myself, hey, like, that's $2,000. I don't have that money, like I'll probably never get that. And I worked hard for my initial pairs and my initial girls, and I put a lot of myself into trying to get all these animals, and they're all my dream stuff, and I love seeing everything take off as I'm growing with it, failing at the same time, and really learning from that, and trying to fail better the next time, and really
Mm-hmm.
trying to get it the hopefully the third and fourth time, and um for me, I couldn't really, I don't want to take them for granted. I don't want to just, I have dope stuff. I'm not going to just be like, oh, that's just going to sit in the cage, and I'm just going to get likes from it. I want to do successful stuff with these animals. If that makes sense, setting goals and completing them with these animals.
Right.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's my process. I love the whole thing. Failing and growing with it helping you as a person, character, as keeping monitor lizards. I think and a lot of other people, it for one is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's time consuming. It takes a lot out of you, even just to do soil. cost money, cost all this. You're sacrificing space. And so as a like an adult or just a responsible human being, boy, you better have your game on tight if you want to keep monitoring lizards. You know, like
Absolutely.
you are responsible, or you're now going to be balancing and budgeting your money, or how you're going to be spending it, or what you're going to be applying, and just to be able to maintain these things.
Right.
So it's going to draw the man out of you, or the responsible person out of you.
Yep.
And that's where I also get that fulfillment out of them, because I used to be a little knucklehead, and basically taking these animals for granted, even if I had one or two, and once I realized what they were doing for me and what they were doing, what I can do with them for other people, man, like that also was another fulfillment part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's
What
a lot.
about you, man?
Oh, there's a lot to this. I joke around a lot. I say it's a toxic relationship, I think, and maybe we're just broken people, the monitor lovers out there. we're in a one-sided relationship sometimes, and it's time, it's sacrifice, not only in space, but it hits you in your budget. You have to adjust your life sometimes. I mean, this is reptiles in general, but primarily with animals that need, food every day. Sometimes for some of these four-legged critters, it's a big commitment, and it's not like it's a cat or a dog. People understand and are familiar with cats and dogs. So if your significant other, you have a cat or dog, it's like you're around it, you're just exposed to it. But if your significant other does not have the same passion as you have for these animals, then you're trying to explain the reason, sometimes on a daily basis, about why you were spending your time, your money, your everything
Yeah.
on this animal. And it can be it can wear you down. If you're not ready for it, it can wear you down. So be careful. Know what you're if you want to get into monitors, if you want to get a monitor, but you are just barely piecing it together just to make it work, like you're like, all right, if I don't do this month and I do this, I will have just enough to do this. Wait a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
Trust me, wait a little bit. They will be there still. Wait. And I've made this mistake early on when I kept animals when I was 18, 19 years old. I made those mistakes. I killed animals, or I didn't appreciate them, or I started flipping animals because all of a sudden I needed to pay the next bill. And then I'm scrambling for the next new project, and then I'm selling that project after a couple months to pay another bill because
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know
being strict with what I have now, like compared to what I was wanting to do before, right? Before it was buy whatever you could and have
Mhm.
it, sulfurs. I had Togiannis at one point. I've had freckled monitors from Doug Price. Like all of these at once, right? The Guru line when they first came out, things like that, and so um, I bought all those and never focused.
Mhm.
Um, you have them and you think you're focusing. Sure, you are learning some stuff, but I'm focused now. Like
Right.
I'm paying attention, but I'm focusing on a strict one or two species, not 10 or I mean, sorry, I know you have 10 or more, but like you're now really focused on taking care of all of those, though. It's not
Mhm.
like you have 10, a menagerie of random stuff, and it's not either implemented any program or breeding program or anything like that. And it's just sitting there taking up space, energy, time, money, whatever, right? And so now I have everything is implemented for a program or in this project, right? And so everything is needing to be strict on diets and stuff like that. It all plays and folds within each other. But if I were to have just a bunch of lone animals as well, man, I really couldn't focus on what I'm doing
Hmm.
just with what I have. With what I have, I'd have to then deal with all these other projects and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I have a ton of stuff, a ton of the same type of stuff though. So, you know, then I'm still trying to focus on those numbers as well. And
Right.
even then, like I have a lot of, I have a lot of mangroves, right? I have 10 or 12 or how many ever I have. And I have, a bunch of Kimberleys, and um, it's then a tackle to just handle the several Kimberleys, and then on another day handle all the mangrove monitors, or both parts of the day. It's like, where I'll do Kimberleys earlier, and then I'll do the mangroves in a few hours, and stuff like that. So um, it's having to accommodate and be strict with that too.
Yeah. For me, when I see a monitor, I think when I first got into seeing monitors, I didn't pay attention to the stuff like the Savannah monitors or the Nile monitors too much. What actually got me was Ackies. The first time I saw an Ackie with that tail, that just monitor look in a dwarf package, the way their tongues move, you know, it just it struck me. I wanted it. I think if I remembering right, if anybody has those old reptile magazines, it might have been like it was an episode back in the 90s, that featured Ackies in there. And I think I read that thing probably 100 times, just going
Yeah,
over, studying each picture in there, what kind of cages, trying to figure out what kind of bulbs they were using in the cages and different things. Um, so Ackies kind of drew me into the whole monitor world and how they started, how their bodies worked, what they were, and then to realize how many different species of monitors were actually out there. Um, and they just fascinated me. The fact that, you could have this animal reach maturity in a year for some of these species and multi-clutch during a year, um, and have all these little babies and everything. And
yeah.
it's just like this is insane.
They're hard, but when you cracked it, they're easy. Like, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
and you I think all of us go through this. You get stuff, and you develop like you get cool stuff, and you probably have goals, and you develop a sense of arrogance, right? And
yeah.
that cockiness a little bit, and it's good to have some confidence in you, but you want to be open minded to your failures and stuff like that as well.
Oh yeah.
um, and those are going to set you back, and they're going to put you in your place essentially where you thought you knew by research and maybe even having them and paid for them. But like I've said before, if until you've got them to go through life cycles and do things like laying and breeding, or you've killed them, then you understand what really keeping them is like. Um,
And believe me, we hope nobody has to kill a monitor out there. Believe the people that do keep monitors, we've all killed enough.
yeah,
But
yeah,
unfortunately, there will be more. um, yeah, they are a ton of work. I have these little dreams, these little fantasies sometimes about just keeping snakes and just enjoying my. In my mind, what
eating
was it? Yeah, yeah. I have
feeding.
this like commercial. They do those commercials for like whatever it is, whether it's an STD or some heart medication. In my mind, it's Novaranis. Take Novaranis once a day. Talk to your doctor. And there I am out in the field skipping around and dancing with the butterflies, just keeping snakes or something.
Yeah,
So
easy. Yeah.
I wouldn't have
Uh,
to worry about vacation. I could kind of schedule my own breaks. And it's like, I think about these snake guys. I got some buddies that are snake guys. What are you guys complaining about? That's what I
yeah, there's a lot more to accommodate with the animals that we're doing currently. And so it's new. Even though many of us have been doing it for years. And people that like are the godfathers and pioneers of this were trying to have us grasp onto what they were doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's still not like I told you before, and people weren't really paying attention to the soil and below. They're just paying attention to what's above the soil,
Right.
and they weren't really taking all those things into accommodation. Essentially, just heated nesting, so that way, that's replicating where the animal is from.
Mm-hmm.
Its form, you know, derives a lot of humidity and everything like that when you add moisture to it, and um, really being like that when you open a cage, it's that hot, humid,
Mm-hmm.
denseness, right? And so that's kind of what you want to feel when you open an enclosure. It's like, man, it's hot and humid in there. Um, yeah, so
You know what's keeping me going? I guess we can just we covered the questions, and we want to thank Eric for putting those out there. Anybody else, please feel free. We want to talk to you guys, whether you're beginners or you're guys that have been doing this a while. We want to hear from everybody. One, if we can help, but two, you know, one of the reasons that we started this is Kai and I were having those 2 o'clock in the morning conversations. I think I could hear him working with animals on his end. I'm in, my warehouse working with animals. We're doing different things, and we're trying to problem solve together. And we were like, man, we just wish there was somewhere to go where this information is more readily available. And
right,
we're talking like, man, we wish there was a podcast just for monitors. We wish there was some more content that was just about monitors. And yeah, a little bit. I don't even know how long it took. We were talking. I mean, we were having like a couple hour conversations sometimes,
yeah, yeah,
and we said, hey, what if we just made a space for this to happen? We're not trying to come in here saying we know everything, because we definitely don't, but we want to
right,
learn. Hopefully we'll get some, if there's anybody listening out there, some people with some good information, good experience with different species, because we want that content too. um
yeah,
I get kind of jealous sometimes. I'm like, man, because I guess I should explain. Just in the first couple of episodes that have been released, we've gotten a lot of compliments, a lot of good feedback from guys, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I turned it on when I was working in the reptile room, and I was listening to this." And, I had this funny thought. It was like, man, I wish I could listen to a monitor podcast while I'm working on my stuff. I don't
yeah,
want to hear myself talk all the time. So uh,
yeah, yeah.
it's just a funny thought, but um, I don't know. Anything else rolling around still in your head, Kai, about all this?
No, I mean, as far as now, you know, these sessions where we're having questionnaires and we maybe even have people come on. Yeah, again, we want this to be branched out to everybody. Even if you just got your now monitor,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, because there's going to be thousands of people that are going to be able to relate to you right now because of the season they just came in. And same thing with savannas and some other species of animals, and where the mass of them dying, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to see if the questions that you have are relatable to other people, and if you're willing to either drop us some questions that we can answer here, or would you even like to come on yourself,
Right.
and where we'd have you as a guest, and essentially we'd have questions back and forth, and dissect kind of what you are trying to figure out, and what we can see if other people can relate as well.
Right.
um, yeah. Now, as far as closing this up, I really just wanted to talk about some of the things we kind of have going on, and then
Yeah.
now, for me, I am actually getting into my season. Things are cracking off really well for me. Everything is eating more, starting to go through cycles, look gravid, start dropping eggs, and kind of things are taking off for me. So I've had to pay attention, revamp everybody's soil, make sure everybody's nest bins are tuned up, temperatures are good, go through every nest bin, dig deep down, and basically double check everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my core temperatures, um, add humidity where I need moisture and humidity where I need to, and even spruce up some cages a little bit. But right now it's just making sure that I'm there for support during this time of, I would say, taking off on all my animals, cycling and laying eggs and going through everything.
Man, yeah, I kind of got the same going on. So I got a good clutch from an Aki girl. I'm expecting another two girls to go, and I posted a pic of one of my Tristis females who was going through the pre-swell.
Nice.
The male's been showing interest in the last couple days, so I'm expecting that to happen. Other than that, the first clutch of sand monitors, I think I'm in that final like 30-day window, I think.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
but anything could happen. So I'm not trying to get ahead of myself with that. But man, I cannot wait to see those little heads. They're such cool little babies.
Yeah.
Um, and I really like one of the reasons that we keep monitors to answer that. Yeah, seeing babies, man, is just awesome. When you see that tongue flicking out of the egg, it's just like, yes.
When you're young and you're like going through, um, just the dream stuff you could do at reptiles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like hatching monitors is up there,
Right.
and now that when you actually get to do it and you see it, it's just it's a
Right.
treasuring moment, very very treasuring moment. And,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, especially when you put 200 days into not only everything
Oh,
you got to do to get to the adults,
it's
to
the
breed.
stress.
Yeah,
Stress.
we're gonna die early.
It's like, why are you up right now? Why is there a green dot?
Uh-huh.
It's 3 a.m. Like,
That's what we joke about that, but it's true. I'll wake up, I'll jump on my phone. I'm like, oh, I gotta go do something. Who's up? Kai. I can count on Kai to be up.
yeah,
It's like,
I'm
hey,
typically
buddy.
up.
Yep.
My window and everything like that is all messed up. There is no separation now. So if you're in Indonesia, you're sleeping and I'm awake, I'm gonna message you. If it's 4 a.m. and it's California and you're sleeping, I'm gonna message you.
Right.
I actually have my lady reminds me all the time. She's like, they're sleeping. And I'm just like, yo, I totally forgot. I'm just awake, so I think
Yeah.
everybody's awake too, and I'm just gonna start flying off questions and stuff. And if they
Yeah.
answer, they answer. If they don't, they don't.
It's funny. It's not just us. There's other people. I'm sure you can jump on the messaging app, and you see these little green dots. It's like, oh, the monitor
Yeah,
people are up.
or it's just the way I have some of my nights, my cycles too. I still have some lights on at nighttime, and so
Yeah.
like I'll go and peep and make sure everything's okay. And then I feed my grasshoppers every 3 to 4 hours. So I'll be like, even if I went to sleep at 9 or 10 p.m., I'll wake up 1 or 2 a.m. and then go feed and then go back to sleep or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh no. I like
So
my
a lot of
sleeps a
stuff
little
happens
much.
at those hours, a lot of stuff. Like it's dumb for me to not be awake or give a little peek because things are breeding. I'm barely in and out of there, So they're like, oh, he's not around. Let's do stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So
You're
yeah,
right about that.
yeah. It's where
Um,
it's where I just peep from the room that's next door, and I'll kind of look from the door and see what they're doing, and if I can try to sneak over there, take some pictures or record what they're doing and kind of timestamp it.
it's funny. When I walk in, I wave at cages. I don't know why, but I have some cages that are elevated. So, I'm about 6 foot tall, and these cages are up towards the top, the area I have. So they're maybe about 12 feet, right? So, and they're at the back, so maybe I don't know, 25 feet away, and I'll see a little head peeking out of a piece of bark way back there, and I'll wave.
Yeah,
I don't know why I do it, but it's just one of those little things. I think like, oh, I see you, you see me. I'm gonna get to work, and then I'll be out of your way again, and
yeah.
it's just funny stuff. But other things, I don't know. The sand monitor female is about to drop again. from the look of everything. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully everything will go good. I changed some things up this time, so I don't know how it's going to work out. That was more. I could have kept everything the same and probably been fine, but I wanted to experiment. I just wanted to tweak or change something a little bit, just for my own knowledge and benefit. So we'll see how it goes. I got to get these Indonesian animals figured out. So I'm going to be picking your brain actually a lot more in the next couple weeks, because I'm really going to hit that. Gosh, what else? I don't know, man.
I think that kind of concludes it for this one.
Yeah.
I think everybody, we've answered everybody's questions that have sent us the last few days. A lot of people congratulating us. We want to make sure that you guys know that we love you guys for paying attention and just keeping up with us. We're trying to make sure that we have plenty of content for you guys and information, and at the same time also release it fast enough. And all of this is trying to be done weekly for you. So if you just stay tuned, hopefully every weekend we have something in store for you guys. All right.
Yeah, I think hopefully a lot of the things we go over, you're reading your animal. So there's care, husbandry stuff that we're trying to get people aware of, if they're not already aware of, that just work with animals in general. But we're gonna get into a few species specific things, I think, which we hope will be really entertaining, real cool for you guys too. So, all right,
there'll be species that that everybody seems to work with, and but not really have success with.
Right.
So,
right.
All right, you guys. Until next time.
Yeah,
thank you guys for tuning in.
And go ahead and check out the Morelia Python Radio Network. You can find them online on Facebook, on Instagram, but also go to MoreliaPythonNetwork.net. Again, look around their page. A lot of interesting material, a lot of good stuff to check out. Even if it's Python is in the name, go ahead and look through some of the episodes of like NPR. They talk to a lot of people. There's great information in some of those episodes, and just some history of keeping in general, from some of these keepers that, started us off in this hobby. And a lot of them were doing not only some monitors, but pythons, figuring out how to keep animals in boxes for the rest of us to have a starting point. So check them out. We again want to thank Eric for all the help that he's been able to give us and all the guidance through this. Also, look at the Patreon on there if you want to support to get more of this content out and support the other podcasts, not only this one, but the other ones that are out there are just there's NPR, Colibrid Corner, Carpets and Coffee, Humans of Herpetoculture. Gosh, there's a Field Herp podcast. There's I think there's a history. There's a lot of them.
Quite a bit. Yeah,
I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad because when they talk about them, they can't remember them all. So, but really get on there and check it out, guys. So again, thank you for being with us. Kai?
Hey man, thanks for doing this with me again. I guess we'll see each other in the next couple of days. All right, man. Have a good time with your family.
Yeah, we'll do.